Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I am really excited to be here and go through a new topic, if you will, to be presented out around revenue growth levers. A little bit of why you're hearing from me. I've actually been in venture capital backed companies for about 20 years in specifically revenue operations and enablement, supporting strategies primarily in sales and customer success, but definitely eking into that marketing and product side. About the last year, I've been an advisor at Insight where we partner with a couple hundred VC backed companies and do just what I've been able to do over the years, which is help with their go to market strategies. What I wanted to address today with you is really to go through these 6 questions, and it comes in kind of 2 parts. The first is going to be understanding growth levers, and the second is going to be around how you can structure either your revenue operations organization or if you manage that organization to really take a look at how that could be structured to support as you're looking at these new levers of growth. So I don't think this is going to be new for a lot of folks. You're aware that as you roll out new products or you change pricing, or maybe you improve different, or you bring into focus different distribution levers, that you might have those items drive more revenue for you. And that's really what I wanted to focus on today, though, are all the items that could be falling into this. People's a common one, and I know that this is an area where in the past, folks have said, let's put those reps into the Excel sheet and we'll make sure that they are then ramping faster and there's no plan behind them. And that's not what I'm here to talk about today. I'm here really to focus on some of these other areas and to say, do you know what it really takes to do a new product introduction, either to build that or to buy that, and what that could look like in your annual operating plan? When you're looking at pricing, are you understanding the different packaging and promotion items that might need to be there? As you're looking to go into new markets, new countries, new verticals, new segments, is there an understanding of really what that takes to open that up? As you look to distribution, and I'll use distribution a couple ways today, but this is really about channels, partnerships. This could be opening up PLG motions. It might be around new outbound motions with BDRs and ABX. There could be a lot in these areas. But the big question is really not just what are you opening up, which are the growth levers, but how much is that going to bring you and how are you going to do that? So I wanted to give you just a fast framework and a way to really put those revenue growth levers through to see if you're ready to do that and how to make sure, especially in RevOps, that you're including that in your annual plan. So the first, it's kind of a 6 part step of, do you understand where you're at with your market, your model, people, plan, process, and systems? So I've put some kind of starter questions, if you will, to see where those are at. And it really jumps into, this is all illustrative, if you will, for seeing what might work. And it's really understanding, if I am rolling out a new product, is the target market the same? I'm not going to go into TAM, SAM, SOM analysis today, but is the target market the same? Is the ideal customer profile any different? Is the buyer persona different? For example, if I was selling to end users and now I have to roll that up and sell into a consolidated CIO persona, is that different? And do we then need to have different use cases? If there's different use cases, how do we need to make sure that our messaging, our positioning, and our enablement is really working for our field? You'll need to go through the model as well. If there's a new product coming, who will be doing the prospecting? How will you land that? How will you expand it? Who will own the retention? And you can kind of go through this piece and see that there are really I think it's going to be 30 questions that you need to be looking at and asking for each of these revenue growth levers coming through. And anymore, you are most likely rolling out new products, changes in pricing, new markets, new segments. It's really important to be looking at this through each one. But what I wanted to highlight, especially with a really strong revenue operations audience, is what you kind of need to interlock on and what you really should be owning in these areas. So it's not a surprise that partnering on the annual operating plan and making sure that territories and leads, quota, and comp, anything around sales process can and should be owned by the revenue operations group. But this really highlights that understanding what's happening up top with your HR, marketing, finance, and product team, that you were able to put that through and make sure that it fits in all of those different areas and is kind of running on all cylinders. The last item that I want to share here is making sure that your system's really aligned to this. Again, it was great to see Guy Rubin and what he was able to do with not only the data management side, but what that could look like for forecasting. Those are all the levers that would need to be in there in considerations as you build out your annual operating plan and what some of those growth levers might look like. There's a way that I've talked about in the past of how to measure what's actually happening with new growth levers. And you might say, well, I would just look at if the reps are productive. And the answer is yes, that's true. You can absolutely look at performance in those areas. But there might be times where there are questions around why isn't maybe the second product that we rolled into a market, why isn't that doing as well as that first product? And sometimes the easy answers are to say, well, the reps aren't prospecting or they weren't trained, or there could be a variety of other items. Something that I've used in a past life is to really showcase what the different distribution methods were aligned to the markets, to the products that were there. And that's these two kind of simplified sample matrices that you'll be seeing. And what we did when our second product wasn't selling as much was to really identify, well, did we have the readiness in the distribution branches that we needed to have? And what I mean by that is our core product was selling really well in our first market. Let's call that the United States. And I'm over in America. If it was in the second market, we'll have that be the UK, and market C is maybe Japan. If you're not actually putting into place the right people and structures, distribution, the programs, and all the things that make a product selling successfully beyond just what the sales reps have, you might see a second product matrix that has more of this red coming through. This is going to be different, especially for companies where if you're going to deploy a new product in a new market and you're maybe not taking a channel first approach. And channel, I know, can include referrals and resellers and distributions and ISV and all of those areas. But in general, that sometimes is where you need to be country forward. And if that's not deployed, let's say in a company like Japan, and that is how your product should be purchased and should be consumed by your customer, that's going to mean that you'll probably have a red box in that square and not addressing the items that you want to be addressing in your revenue plan. So this is just one example of a way that beyond just are the reps performing or not, are we making our quota, to really sit down with your interlock teams in marketing, in product, and in anyone who's really running your distribution levers to see if were they supported with programs, were they given budget to go into these markets and to help drive some of the inbound SEO digital outbound that maybe needs to occur. I'm going to pause there. I unfortunately can't see any questions coming in on screen. All I can see are my own slides and I can't even see y'all. So I'm going to jump over to operational readiness. So we've covered what some of those growth levers are. And again, they're going to be things like people, product, markets, distribution, acquisitions. All of these things, someone in revenue operations needs to be ready to put through the annual operating plan. That can work, but there are times where you might say, well, how should I be structuring my team? And am I really ready to do that? One of the ways that we talk about revenue operations at Insight Partners is really moving from admin to analyst to advisor. And this is just a fast slide that goes through that. And I know that I've gone through this journey in my career over 20 years. I really started administering the CRM as I think a lot of folks did. I then was able to move in from kind of systems to spreadsheets, that admin to analyst leap, and start to take a look at not just the data, but how we could drive that data into action and do that then across various teams and make sure that we were aligned and driving forward on our strategies. But really, what we think our revenue operations leaders should be as that advisor to the business. And Guy actually just shared this in the prior presentation as well, is to be that strategic advisor. And we totally agree. And I totally agree that that's a really strong goal to get to and to reach to. That happens by working through the annual operating plan, understanding how to grow, and making sure that all of those items are aligned and working in those areas. Again, this is just a fast slide to think about it. But if you look back on your career, if you are in RevOps, you maybe followed that admin to analyst to advisor role. You also, though, don't get to hang out in the advisor space. Every operations leader I know has to run the gamut up and down on that admin analyst to advisor piece. The next question that I want to answer is really, are you structured to support new revenue growth levers? There's a lot of great examples out there today of what a revenue operations team should look like. I've taken a pretty standard structure of it can frequently include teams from marketing ops, from sales ops, or from customer success ops. There's various ways that this could be combined or not combined. And I think what I'll be answering after this is how these might look different at an organization. Revenue operations is not just centralizing and reporting through one leader and calling it revenue operations. It's making sure that they have the right interlocks with teams, that they're focusing on the right services that need to be provided out, and that they're really supporting the business as a whole. The next slide is also illustrative, and it just shows maybe 5 of the common things that could roll up through revenue operations. So strategy and planning, this is, I think, what I used to be called, or I used to call kind of the core items within sales ops, from the plan to the headcount to territories, lead routing, quota comp, pipeline forecasting, and analytics. It includes all of those key areas that you need to run the business. Data and analytics is another way to look at it, especially if you have a large data company or you're driving a lot of analysis through to the business, separate from all the day-to-day kind of strategy and planning. Process and systems, I think folks know that's really that administrative side of things, but there is so much more. You might be helping with CRM architecture, end-to-end business process design, not only doing project management, but technical project management, and making sure that all of these are structured. Then you've got your field ops and support, and this can sound like business partners at a company. This can also sound like deal desk, or just making sure that there is an assigned operational rhythm for those sales leaders. And then last is go to market enablement. It can be included in ops. It can definitely be a separate structure that's there. But of course, this is making sure that reps are onboarded and that they have ongoing enablement along with manager enablement, and then may or may not include things like partner enablement and customer enablement. So what does this all mean when we look at something like sample teams and sample services? It really comes down to, as a revenue ops leader, are you able to manage the complexity of your organization with your structure? And here's what I mean by that: what you sell, who you sell to, where you sell, and how you sell can be very different. And one of the items, when I get asked of, well, how should I structure my revenue operations org? And I think there's at times a desire to have a one size fits all answer. And I wish there was. Unfortunately, I've seen it structured now at Insight just multiple different ways based on where an organization is at in that journey. And I've also structured it multiple different ways depending on the business that I've been at. What I wanted to bring to you today is just kind of a concept and an idea of really understanding the right centralization or decentralization of your teams and services to support those revenue growth levers. And what I mean by that is really taking a look at the growth levers, the kind of sample teams that you maybe have in your organization, and sample services. So here's a first example with Company A. Let's say Company A has one product, they're selling it into one segment, into the enterprise. They're in one market in the United States, and they have one kind of distribution branch with direct selling. The complexity here is kind of a one by one by one by one, which is really just kind of 4 items, if you will, that you need to be focusing on. This is an example where if I was asked, how should we structure our revenue operations group? It might be very doable to have a fully centralized RevOps team across marketing, sales, and customer operations, and then include all of the sample services that are there. This is a pretty basic example, but this is also, I think, where many companies can start. The second example, company XYZ, they're maybe a little more mature in their curve. They're at a 50, 100 million, maybe higher rate of what needs to happen. They've got 4 products. They're selling into 3 segments: enterprise, mid-market, SMB. And then they have 4 markets. I'll just call, they're just going to be countries in this example: United States, UK, Aussie, and Japan. And then 3 distribution channels. And this is where it starts to get a little trickier with direct, channel, and PLG. This complexity, if you take a 4 by 3 by 4 by 3, puts you at about 144 different combinations of items that you maybe need to know. This could be how you are actually carving your territories. This could be the different sub sales processes that you need to know. This is maybe how you've organized some of the teams. This could be where your systems actually have to run in different areas, or your deal desk is operating in different languages, different currencies. And so in this example, it might be too much for the business to have that all run through one leader. But the business might say, well, we would love to centralize on strategy, data, and analytics on our systems to make sure that no matter what is coming through marketing, sales, and customer ops, we're always doing strategy, data, and systems the same. But then field operations and go-to-market enablement might be decentralized into some of those areas. And this is, again, just an example of how you might want to construct some of those areas and where they need to go. So, as a revenue operations leader, ideally, you really are understanding what those common growth levers are. You know some of those key considerations for new growth levers, you know how to measure them. And then, last but not least, you're structuring your organization to what that needs to be. And really, that's an important piece to remember because your annual operating plan, some folks write a 12-month plan and they cut it into 6 months and really look at things differently of, again, how those growth levers can boost up the revenue that they need to have. And your structure might need to change on that. It also might need to change if there are partnerships where they're running a little light and you have a little stronger kind of batting kind of at bats. So an example might be in FP&A. They might run a little light. You maybe have heavy data and analysis. How can you partner together to make sure that that organization is structured and designed to get in those areas? And then last, just continuing to manage the complexity of your company with a RevOps org. You might start centralized. You might move to some decentralization in your services. And then when the time is right, you might come back and be fully centralized again as some of those items may be moved to interlocks, or you're able to staff up accordingly and with those areas. So that's what I have today to present through. And I'll stop sharing now because I can't see anyone on this end and see if there are questions that I can be answering for the group.